And here I have one of the core instances here that's running and deployed actually on top of a very small cluster, single node cluster of Kubernetes. And for those who are, potentially not familiar with Kubernetes, we might have different teams that operate out of different namespaces or different segments, right? So a cluster might be shared for an organization. You might have one team that's security, one team that's applications, one team that's for the system. And each of these teams might have different inputs, outputs, processing that is required for them. And typically what we see when an organization goes and adopts Kubernetes and starts to do some system monitoring is that they deploy Helm charts, and then they're constantly modifying some configuration, trying to match the Fluent configuration with the Kubernetes configuration. And that can get very tedious. It can get quite overwhelming. And so with what we've built with Calyptia Core on the Kubernetes side is really a purpose-built and first-party view for how this works. And so what I'm showing here is instead of a typical source, which may be syslog, it may be an agent-based source or collection from audit logs, I actually have here all Kubernetes logs. And from that, I'm sending it to two destinations. I'm sending it to Redpanda, which is like a Kafka type application, and then I'm sending it to a null output just as an alternative destination. Now, if I go ahead and open up this window here, and I do kubectl, let's increase the size here so it's easier to read. If I do kubectl get pods, I can see I have a couple of applications running in my Kubernetes clusters, and I can do kubectl get namespace. So here you can see I have a couple of namespaces. I have some that just come by default within Kubernetes. I have a security, I have an application, I even have a fleet namespace here. Now we can, if we go back to the UI here, we can go look at this source and you'll see all of those namespaces, right? 7 namespaces available. I'll go create a new one for the purposes of this demo. And what we'll try to emulate is within a shared cluster, we're going to create a brand new namespace, deploy an application. And once we deploy that application, we want to route those logs very specifically to a particular end destination. So first, let's go create a new namespace. So we'll call it demo namespace. Perfect. That's gone and been created. And if I come back here, let's just make sure it's now populated within the UI. I'm going to go do a refresh. So it's loading the Kubernetes environment again, making sure that any of the events, let's go click source again, and perfect, right? Here is that demo namespace we just created. We went from 8 to, or 7 to 8. So let's go ahead now back into our cluster UI. And what I'll do from here is we're going to run an application very specifically in that namespace. So we're going to run Nginx. And we're going to make sure that this is in the demo application. And you're going to have to excuse me because I am doing all this live. I forgot the actual commands to run a pod like this. Okay, cool. That ended up working much better than I anticipated. So let's go ahead and kubectl get pods for the namespace demo. And there's an Nginx in there. If we go do a logs on top of that, looks like it's generating a few logs here and there. So what we're going to do is say, let's go grab all of the logs from this particular pod, and let's route that to something fun like Redpanda here. So we'll go back over here and we'll add a new source. We'll call it for demo. Now, the nice thing here is you can specify regex, right? So I could say anything that matches D star. I could use anything that has cube in there. I'll go ahead and just match demo very specifically. And then that adds it almost as a new source for a very specific namespace. And typically when you go deploy on Kubernetes, you deploy as what's called a daemon set. That means for every node of Kubernetes, there is now an instance that is being managed by Calyptia Core, and it is collecting all the logs that pertain to these namespaces or these inputs to route it to that particular backend. So in Redpanda, we're going to edit this here, and we're going to switch this from all inputs now to just the namespace matching demo. You go ahead and save that. And now we can go ahead and save and deploy. And what the fleet management for Kubernetes does is it goes and adjusts the whole entire daemon set for us. It knows the matching parameters, it knows the regex, it knows where to send it. And if I come back into my Redpanda console and we start doing some refreshing here, we should start to see some of those Nginx logs. In fact, let's maybe do a quick search there. Maybe this is it. Let's see. Different pod name, but you can see there's also a lot of enrichment that's happening. So effectively what we also do with the Kubernetes fleet management is there's a lot of metadata information that is important, right? If we think of a typical log in a containerized environment, this message is just not too informative by itself. It doesn't include what pod, what node, where did this occur, how did this occur. So having the particular ability to go and enrich with all of this information makes it much, much easier to start debugging a particular, my app, which has this pod ID, this pod name in this namespace started malfunctioning. You can even see it gives you some of the host and container information as well. So a lot of that available. Let's do a quick refresh, see if maybe that now it's available here. Okay, let's see. Yeah, so it's collecting some information here on health checks. Let's see if Nginx now lights up. Still nothing there. Let's go look at what those logs looked like. So ePol, maybe something like that shows up. No luck there either. I haven't used the search here, as you can probably tell. So maybe let's just go down here, see if we can find any particular log that might match that specific. Now, the nice thing is if you put this in an index store or something like a Splunk or Elasticsearch, you'd be able to say, hey, give me anything that contains this pod name. In this one, we just chose something very quick to stream the data from like a standard out perspective. So which is why it's collecting all this information. Okay, so we'll go ahead and move on to the second part of Kubernetes fleet management. Right, is if we want to go add specific processing, if we want to add more sources. So say, for example, security, and go run something like that, connected up to a different endpoint, we have the ability to do so here. So yeah, this is what Kubernetes fleet management looks like. And again, we're orchestrating that daemon set that exists on the entire cluster, the entire system. And of course, you might tell, hey, this is a preview environment because what we're launching, which is fun to talk about here, is that new Redpanda plugin for Redpanda Cloud.